Thank you so much, Reza. It's like something out of Indiana Jones. A pair of archaeologists believe they found a lost city in the Amazon.
There's a place in the world that is so vast and has such a dense forest that even today it remains shrouded in mystery. This is the Amazon rainforest. When we hear the word Amazon, we usually think of endless trees, huge rivers, and wild animals. But according to studies by scientists and archaeologists in recent years, there is an even more surprising story here that are slowly coming to light. For a very long time, many experts believed that only a few people lived in the Amazon before the Europeans arrived. Because of the harsh environment and the dense forest, they thought it was impossible for large communities or cities to exist there. But as technology improved, that belief started to change. Using modern laser scanning technology known as LiDAR, researchers were able to see hidden structures, even if they were covered. These were covered by thick trees, and what they discovered were not just ordinary ruins. Instead, in different parts of the Amazon, traces of vast settlements were found, roads connecting separate areas, canals for water, and lands deliberately modified by humans to be more suitable for farming. This means that thousands of years ago, there were communities in the Amazon that were more organized and more advanced than experts previously thought. They didn't just live in the forest, but they also transformed their environment. They built infrastructure, they designed systems to make it easier to travel and obtain food. And over time, when these ancient communities disappeared, nature gradually reclaimed what they left behind. Here, trees grew, and the forest expanded, and the traces of a once bustling world were covered by leaves, roots, and soil. Then, history forgot about them. But it's not just the ancient communities that make the Amazon special. It's also home to one of the largest concentrations of life on the entire planet. According to scientists, approximately 10% of all known species of animals and plants in the world can be found in this region. And even today, new species are still being discovered. There are animals, plants, insects, and other creatures that science does not fully understand yet. So despite hundreds of years of study, a large part of the Amazon remains a mystery. And as we discover more about it, a surprising truth comes to light. There may be more secrets hidden beneath this forest than anywhere else on Earth. And now, in this video, we will focus only on the new discoveries made by scientists in the Amazon. Stay until the end because you'll be surprised by what you'll learn. But before we continue the discussion, I would like to ask for a like and please subscribe as well. This is a big help for us content creators. Thank you. So let's get back to it. For hundreds of years, there's been a story that keeps resurfacing throughout the history of South America. It's a story about a lost place, said to be very rich, a place that is said to be full of gold. And the Europeans called it El Dorado. Over time, many explorers believed it was real. Because of this, they began to travel deep into the forest to search for the rumored treasure. But as they went deeper into the Amazon, they encountered more problems than discoveries. Some got sick, some died of hunger, some got lost and never returned. And despite the many expeditions that were made here, no one ever found a city made of gold. That's why El Dorado gradually became just a legend. Many people began to believe that it was just a story that had been exaggerated and passed down through different generations. But even if there was no city made of gold, it's still possible that some of the old stories have truth to them. There may have been large communities in the Amazon in the past. For many decades, most scientists disagreed with this. The reason is simple. Life in the rainforest is difficult. The soil for farming is quickly depleted, the forest is dense, and it's extremely difficult to build large cities in this kind of environment. That's why the prevailing belief was that only small communities could survive in the Amazon. But as technology advanced, this perspective began to change. Instead of searching on the ground, researchers began to study the forest from the air. One of the most important technologies they used was LiDAR. It's a system that uses lasers to create highly detailed maps of the surface of the land. The beauty of this technology is that it can see the shape of the land, even if it's covered by thick trees. It's like slowly removing the green cover of the forest to see what's underneath it. And when the archaeologists started to examine the results, they saw something they didn't expect. In different parts of the Amazon, traces of ancient constructions appeared. There were straight roads. There were large mounds of earth made by humans. There were even canals. For water, there were reservoirs. And there were places that were clearly once centers of large communities. These didn't look like simple villages at all. The discoveries showed that there were communities back then with proper planning and organization. In Bolivia, researchers discovered the remains of vast settlements connected to each other by roads and water systems. This shows that there were people back then who could modify their environment to support a large population. And this is where the old belief about the Amazon began to change. It was no longer seen as just a forest. It is now becoming more evident that for thousands of years, it was also home to communities who knew how to plan, build, and manage large settlements. So while the explorers of the past did not find a city made of gold, they discovered something even more important, a part of history that the forest has long kept hidden. And as more new studies emerge, one question grows even stronger. If this many things have been found in this area, how many more secrets could be hidden in parts of the Amazon that modern science has yet to reach? Let's talk more about that. There's another major discovery from recent years, one made in Ecuador's Upano Valley. Archaeologists have been researching this area for a long time, but when they combined the discoveries on the ground with the modern landscape and dark technology, they saw more clearly the true extent of the ancient community there. And what they found was not a simple town. Within a large part of the valley, they also discovered thousands of structures made by humans themselves. They also found large earthen platforms. There were also open spaces used as the center of the community, and there were also roads connecting different parts of the settlement, and around it, there were traces of widespread farming. This shows that many people lived there for a very long time. According to studies, some settlements in the area began hundreds of years before Christ was born and continued for many centuries. But how do scientists determine how old these places are? This is where another important tool of modern science comes in. And this is what we call radiocarbon dating. Simply put, all living things contain carbon. When a plant or animal is still alive, it continuously absorbs carbon from the environment. But when it dies, that process stops. After that, a special type of carbon called carbon-14 gradually decreases. And by measuring how much carbon-14 is left, scientists can estimate how long it has been since a plant, wood, or other organic material died. It's like there's a natural clock left inside the remains of the past. When radiocarbon dating and LIDAR are combined, the whole picture becomes clearer. LIDAR tells us where the ancient structures are located. Radiocarbon dating tells us when they existed. And as more studies are conducted, a bigger story is gradually taking shape. It's not just one place that shows traces of ancient settlements, not just Ecuador, not just Bolivia. In different parts of the Amazon, there are also signs that humans have long been shaping the forest. There are parts of the rainforest that were once thought to have formed naturally, but now there is evidence showing that some of these areas have been altered by humans for many generations. What's even more surprising is that there are trees more commonly found near ancient settlements. There are also areas that seem to have been deliberately cared for and enriched by communities in the past. This means they didn't just live in the Amazon. They actively modified and managed their environment. That's why this has become one of the biggest changes in scientists' understanding of the rainforest. For a long time, many thought that the Amazon was almost untouched by humans before the modern era. But now it turns out that its history is more complicated than previously believed. And if the new studies are correct, it's possible that thousands of other ancient structures are still hidden beneath what we can see. Dense forests, places that have never been seen, communities that have yet to be discovered, and stories long buried beneath one of the largest forests in the world. Let's continue. Despite all that modern science has discovered, there is still one mystery that has never been found in the Amazon, and that is the famous El Dorado. When many people hear this name, they immediately think of a lost city full of gold, a place just waiting to be found in the middle of the jungle. But surprisingly, that story might have been wrong from the very beginning. According to historians, the original story of El Dorado was not really about a city made of gold. It was not about a hidden kingdom either. Instead, it is related to an ancient ritual of the indigenous Muisca people in what is now Colombia. For them, gold was not simply a symbol of wealth. It had an important meaning in their culture and beliefs. In some ceremonies, the new leader was covered with fine gold powder all over his body. After this, he would ride a raft to the middle of a sacred lake. There, they would offer valuable items as part of their ritual. As time passed, stories about this ceremony reached the Europeans. But as it was told and retold, it also changed. The legend gradually grew. The truth is, it was a leader covered in gold. But in the legend, it became a city full of gold. A single ritual turned into a lost kingdom. And a real tradition became one of the most famous legends in history. Because of this, many explorers spent a lot of money and traveled very far to find that place. Some expeditions lasted for many months. Some groups never returned. And there were people who dedicated their entire lives to searching for a treasure that might not even exist. While they were busy searching for a city made of gold, there was something much more important that they failed to notice: the true history of the people who lived in the Amazon. Now, with the help of archaeology, satellite technology, and other modern tools, scientists have a much clearer understanding of the past of this region. Even though they didn't find the El Dorado from the legends, they discovered something even more important. They discovered that the Amazon is not just home to trees and plants. It was also once inhabited by organized communities, people who built roads, people who designed water systems, people who transformed their environment to make their lives easier. In other words, the true treasure of the Amazon is not gold. It is the knowledge about the people who have long been forgotten by history. If there is one thing that truly changed the way scientists look at the Amazon, it is not a lost city, nor is it an ancient temple, and it is certainly not a treasure made of gold, but soil. Yes, just soil. At first glance, it doesn't seem like an important discovery, but in truth, it is one of the biggest keys to understanding how large communities survived in the middle of the rainforest. For a long time, many experts believed that it was difficult to build large settlements in the Amazon because most of its natural soil is not very fertile. If it's hard to plant, it's also hard to feed thousands of people. That's why many scientists in the past doubted that large communities existed in this region. But when some areas in the Amazon were studied more closely, researchers noticed something. There were parts of the soil that were different, darker, more fertile, and it has more nutrients compared to the usual soil around it. This is now called Amazonian dark earth, or terra preta. And what's more surprising is that this didn't just form naturally. According to studies, there's a strong possibility that this was made by the ancient inhabitants of the Amazon over a very long period of time. Instead of letting the soil's nutrients be depleted, they added ashes, charcoal, leftover food, and other organic materials. This gradually enriched the soil until it became more suitable for farming. In other words, they didn't just let nature decide where they could plant. They found a way themselves. Because of this, they harvested more food, fed more people, and made it possible to have larger communities. But the importance of terra preta doesn't end there. Scientists also noticed that this type of soil is excellent at storing carbon for a very long time. This means it has effects that reach up to the present day. While researchers were studying ancient communities, They also noticed another unusual pattern. Around many archaeological sites, certain types of trees and plants that are useful to people are more commonly found. This doesn't mean that the entire Amazon was planted by humans, but it shows that many parts of the forest may have been affected by the decisions of ancient communities. There were trees that were cared for, plants that were propagated, and areas that were deliberately enriched to be more useful for future generations. As a result, the old simplistic view is shifting. It's no longer just a story of man versus nature, and it's not a story of a forest that was never touched by humans either. The idea that is closer to the truth is that for thousands of years, humans and the forest developed together. While the Amazon shapes the lives of those who live here, people also shape certain parts of the Amazon. But there is another reason why the Amazon is important to the whole world. It's not just home to millions of plants and animals. It's not just a place of ancient civilizations. It is also a massive storehouse of carbon. Simply put, carbon is one of the elements that affects the Earth's climate. When too much carbon goes into the atmosphere, the planet gets warmer, and this is where the Amazon becomes important. For a very long time, the rainforest has helped absorb and store a huge amount of carbon in the trees, plants, and even in the soil. It's like a giant bank that stores carbon instead of money. But there's a problem. When the forest is cut down or burned because of large wildfires, its ability to store carbon gradually decreases. In some parts of the Amazon, scientists have discovered that more carbon is being released than absorbed. This means that one of the world's most important defenses against climate change is weakening. And as the forests shrink, the risk of this problem getting worse in the future increases. But it's not just the forests. This is why the Amazon continues to be studied. There is another huge mystery that still hasn't been fully answered until now. How many kinds of life have we not yet discovered? With the vast number of rivers, forests, swamps, and remote areas in the Amazon, many scientists believe that there are still countless plants and animals that science has yet to identify. And what's surprising is that even today, new species are still being discovered. There are new kinds of fish, there are new amphibians, there are new plants, and even some large animals are still being studied to determine if they are different from the species that were previously known. This just shows how much we still don't know about this rainforest. And now scientists are able to make discoveries faster because of new technologies. In the past, they had to actually see or catch an animal before they could confirm it was there. But now, there's a more modern way. This is called environmental DNA or eDNA. Simply put, all animals leave tiny traces of their DNA in the environment. It can come from skin, hair, waste, saliva, or other biological material. When these traces end up in the river water, they can be collected and analyzed by scientists. It's like detective work in modern science. You don't need to see the animal itself. Sometimes just a few water samples are enough to find out what creatures live in the area. Because of this, it's easier to identify animals that are rarely seen by people, animals that hide in thick forests, animals that are only active at night, and animals that almost never show themselves to researchers. With every new technology developed, our ability to uncover the secrets of the Amazon grows. And as we learn more, one thing becomes clearer. We still don't fully understand this rainforest. Despite hundreds of years of exploration and study, there are still many parts of the Amazon that remain not fully understood. Despite all the discoveries about the Amazon, there is still one thing that should not be forgotten. This forest is not just a collection of trees, rivers, animals, and ancient ruins. It is also home to real people. To this day, there are indigenous communities living in different parts of the Amazon. Some of them continue to live using traditions that have been passed down. Among them, for many generations, there are also groups that are very rare or have almost no contact with the modern world. Because of this, it is important to be careful in the way we study and explore the rainforest. When a new archaeological site or ancient settlement is discovered, it is not only history that should be considered. It is also necessary to protect the communities currently living in those areas. Because for them, The Amazon is not a mystery to be solved. It is their home. As time goes by, the true story of the Amazon becomes clearer. It is not the story of a lost city waiting to be found, nor is it the story of a legend filled with gold. The truth is broader and more remarkable. It is the story of ancient communities long forgotten. It's the story of people who learned to live and thrive in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. It's the story of forests bearing traces of human influence for thousands of years. And it's the story of countless plants and animals that even today are still being discovered by science. With every new study, the old belief that the Amazon is an empty and untouched forest is being erased. Instead, it turns out to be a place with a very rich history, culture, and biodiversity. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson from all we've discovered. Sometimes the most important treasure isn't what people are looking for. It's not gold. It's not a lost city. It's not a legend. But rather, a deeper understanding of the people who came before us and the world they left behind. And as technology continues to advance, it's likely that many more secrets will be revealed from beneath the thick canopy of the Amazon. But no matter how much we discover, one thing remains true. The Amazon is still one of the most amazing, most mysterious, and most important places on our planet. And perhaps its greatest secret is not what is hidden inside the forest, but how much we still don't know about it. Now let me just add this. There is another mystery in the Amazon that has long been hidden beneath the thick trees. It's not a city. It's not a temple. Instead, these are giant shapes made by humans on the very ground itself. These are called geoglyphs. In simple terms, a geoglyph is a massive design or shape made on the surface of the ground. Usually, these are so large that it's hard to see them while you're on the ground. They're much clearer when viewed from the air. For many years, no one knew these existed in the Amazon because they were covered by thick forests. But as the use of satellite imagery and aerial surveys expanded, strange shapes slowly began to appear. There were perfect circles, there were squares, there were rectangles, and there were long lines connecting different places. At first glance, they seemed to be made by nature. But when archaeologists studied them more closely, they noticed that these were too well formed to be natural formations. This is where one of the most surprising discoveries about the Amazon began. Instead of being a forest with almost no traces of ancient humans, it turns out there were communities back then capable of undertaking large-scale land projects. Many of these geoglyphs were found in the state of Acre in western Brazil, as parts of the forest were cleared for farms and pastures. Shapes that had long been hidden by trees gradually emerged, and as more areas were surveyed, more geoglyphs were discovered. At present, researchers have identified more than 1,000 geoglyphs in different parts of the Amazon, and it's possible that many more have yet to be found. Some of these have diameters reaching more than 300 meters. That means some are even bigger than many sports stadiums. What's even more surprising is that these are not just simple lines. Many of them are made up of deep ditches and high embankments constructed from earth. A large number of people were needed to build these, and that means there was an organized community that managed these projects. But why did they do it? That's the question that experts are still studying to this day. Some archaeologists believe that the geoglyphs may have been used as sites for ceremonies. It's possible that people gathered here for important rituals. Others say that these may have served as the center of the community, like an ancient plaza where people would meet. There's also a theory that some of these have symbolic significance. It could be related to their religion, beliefs, or view of nature. For now, there is still no single answer accepted by all experts. But one thing is clear, these are not just simple holes in the ground. They were made with a purpose. Another important discovery is the location of the geoglyphs. At first, some thought they were in the middle of a dense rainforest when they were built. But according to some studies, the environment in some parts of the Amazon may have been more open during that time. This means that some areas may not have been as densely forested as we see them today. If this is correct, it would be easier for us to understand how ancient communities were able to organize themselves to build large earthworks. But that doesn't mean they had no connection to the forest. In fact, there is plenty of evidence showing that they knew how to live in harmony with their environment. They knew how to farm. They knew how to improve the soil to make it more fertile. And they knew how to use natural resources without having to destroy the entire forest. This is one of the reasons why new discoveries are changing the old perspective about the Amazon. In the past, the rainforest was often described as a place with hardly any large communities. But the geoglyphs tell a different story. They show that there were people here who had the ability to plan large projects. They had the capacity to organize many workers, and they had enough knowledge to transform their environment over a long period of time. What's even more interesting is that this isn't just in Brazil. Structures like these have been found in different parts of the Amazon. There is new evidence showing widespread human activity even before the Europeans arrived. It gradually builds a picture of an Amazon that was more vibrant and more populated than what many people have long believed. And as more satellite images are analyzed and more parts of the forest are studied using modern technology, the number of discovered geoglyphs continues to increase. This means that there is possibly still a lot we don't know. There may be other structures still hidden beneath the thick forest. There may be ancient community centers that have not yet been discovered, and there may be parts of the history of the Amazon that are still waiting to be revealed. So every time we look at the Amazon from space or in satellite images, we're not just looking at a forest. It's also possible that we're looking at traces of people from ancient times who lived there hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Traces that are quietly hidden beneath the trees. Traces that remind us that the Amazon is not just home to animals and plants. It is also a place with a deep, complex, and remarkable history that we are only beginning to understand.